The following will be an overview of Infor Visuals version 9.07. The enhancements for version 9.07 begin with 2 in Application Global Maintenance, 2 additional enhancements inside of Order Entry. We've added financial posting. This is an update that works similar to post-manufacturing journals, making tax digital a requirement for the UK tax reporting. And finally, translations will be covered. Let's start by looking at the 2 enhancements for Application Global. We will begin by looking at an enhancement for Due on Receipt Default for accounting terms. Once I'm in Application Global Maintenance, I will go over to the Defaults tab. In version 9.04, a system-wide default term was added to the database. Now in version 9.07, a Due on Receipt ID can be added as a default. This will allow for cases when there are multiple Due on Receipt IDs existing in your terms table. Here you can identify the default. Notice that the drill down selection will only show those IDs that are comparable or set up for Due on Receipt. As a use case example, consider when an invoice is converted to a memo. You'll notice that the terms field at this point can no longer be accessed. By having the default term set up in Application Global, you can control the term description that displays. Now let's take a look at the display update for report format overrides. This enhancement addresses databases that may have multiple reports that are overridden. Here I've got a list of reports, and you can see that I scroll down to the bottom. I'm going to get into this one example here, and I'm going to match it to standard. And when I match it to standard and then go back and save, you notice that that report becomes the last item on the list. That's the current enhancement. Previously, you would go back to the top of the list of the reports. Next, we can look at the enhancements for Order Entry. We will begin by looking at a delivery schedule enhancement. Going into Order Entry, I will go over to the right-hand side and get into my delivery schedule for this example. Inside of the delivery schedule, you'll notice that the Insert button now is labeled Insert at the end. Same functionality. We've added in the Insert Before feature, so now I can actually insert a row and have a new delivery actually fit in before the 4th delivery. You may also want to modify the date, as I've done here in my example. Press OK, and that will save the changes for my delivery schedule. Now let's take a look at the inactive ship to address enhancement. As an example, I'm going to go into customer maintenance and open up the shipping addresses. And in my database setup, you'll notice that I have 2 addresses for this current customer. And you should identify the new active button. My second ship to address here has been turned off, so it is now inactive. Continuing my example in Order Entry, I'm going to go into shipping addresses, and I will select that inactive address. And you'll notice that when I try to use it, I do get the warning message that the ship to address is inactive and I cannot make the selection. Let's review the financial posting utility, similar to the post-manufacturing journals, where I can go through and manage multiple subledgers from one location. I'm going to go into my file directory and I'm going to go open up VFFINJRN and enter in my credentials to sign into the database. And here you can see the utility open at this point in time. Looks similar to post-manufacturing journals. The primary enhancement is for the site ID filter. I can go under the reports menu and you can work with the following subledgers. And I can print the reports for each individual subledger and get an idea of what's open for transactions. I can go in and do a post all, or I can use the save button and process one subledger at a time. This utility also includes a feature: if you leave the posting date blank, it will post all unposted transactions for all previous periods for these financial subledgers. Next, we will cover making tax digital, a United Kingdom requirement for value-added tax. For specific details on this requirement, you can see the HM Revenue and Customs website, gov.uk. Visual's MTD process will involve 2 steps. First, you will summarize the information required for value-added tax and export it to Excel. Once your data is in the Excel format, you can use the Avalara MTD filer to do the compliance reporting. The MTD filer is a free Excel add-in from Avalara. This requires a registration. See the linked website below for the complete details and the registration requirements. Now let's review the Generate MTD application inside of Visual. The Generate MTD application can be found underneath the Payables main menu. The application is accounting entity based, looking for entities that are set to VAT enabled. The user must also have allowable site access for all of the sites that are within inside of the accounting entities. Typically the reporting is done on a quarterly basis, so we've added the quarterly flag here. But for those exceptions, we also allow a user-defined period to be entered. A filter for invoice date versus posting date is available. The export path displays here. It can also be modified. The lower portion of the window are the 9 boxes that are part of the requirement for MTD. To get the calculation, all you need to do is press the refresh button, and for the quarter, it will give you the calculations to the right-hand side. Use the export button to send your information over to Excel. A message will be generated identifying the path as well as the file that will be saved at this point. The Excel report can be opened, and you'll notice that we're using a template for the display, and you should be able to match it back to the Generate MTD window. In addition to the other required fields, we are also bringing over the entity's business name, its address, the VAT registration number, and the period that we are reporting. The next steps will use the MTD filer add-in to map our fields and report to the HMRC. Our last enhancement to cover will be the translation utility. The translation utility can be found underneath the admin menu. The name of the application can be found in your directory under VM, TRN, MNT. And it's noted that you must also have system administrative privileges to use this application. New language IDs and descriptions can be added. Language IDs are 15 characters, and descriptions can go up to 255 characters. This language ID is new and it's not related to any of the previous functionality. Language assignment can be done here underneath the Edit menu or from the Security menu. Drop-down language ID selection is available. When a language ID is assigned to a user ID, that language ID will become active. Existing translations can be imported, or you can export a language pack from the new utility. In this example, I'm showing you the import, and you'll notice that there are 3 options that come along with the import to help with data validation. Users can insert, delete, and modify information on the bottom portion of the window. In my example, I'm going to modify ECN entry and change it to change entry. 2 filters are available in this window. Notice I can just directly go into the field and I'll type in ECN inside of the visual field, or I could have typed something in the foreign field as well, and you'll notice that the ECN pieces come up. I can filter down to what's been translated or what's untranslated, or I can see both at the same point in time. The last feature to discuss for translations is the Gather Strings utility. I'm going to set the value on and save. This language is now gathering strings. Note that 233 translation rows already exist. I'll close the application, and then I'm going to go over to inventory transaction entry as an example. Working in this application, I'll probably go to some of the sub windows and other menu options. I'll close that window. In here, you'll notice that I'm back into translations maintenance, and my number is now up to 413 rows. It is important to keep in mind that the gather strings utility is designed to only work with one application at a time. Close applications and validate strings before moving on to the next application. Thank you for watching the overview video of Visual version 907.